Something about this interview felt different the moment it started. Not because Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro sounded angry, not because he sounded emotional, but because underneath every answer was this growing tension. The tension of a political establishment realizing that younger Americans are starting to ask questions that used to feel untouchable. Questions about lobbying, questions about influence, questions about political money, questions about whether criticism of powerful organizations is now being reframed as something morally forbidden. And the deeper this interview went, the more uncomfortable it became. Because this was not just another political interview. This became a conversation about identity, power, foreign influence, and whether Americans are still allowed to question lobbying organizations openly without immediately being accused of crossing some invisible line. The atmosphere changed the moment Shapiro started framing criticism of AIPAC as something that could silence certain voices in politics.
I don't know. And look, it's never been an issue in any of my races at the state level, but I do think it has cynically been used by some. I'm going to make this a broad statement, not about the race here in Philly, but I think it's been used cynically by some to try and silence certain voices, to try and say that certain people participating in politics shouldn't count or should be viewed in a toxic way. Now, do I agree with every political decision they made, every endorsement they made? Of course not.
Have they hurt themselves, do you think, AIPAC?
But I think what we have seen is a weaponization of that, and I think that is a danger for our system. When you have people who are...
And before we go deeper into this, if you have not subscribed to Progressive Wave yet, take a second to do that now. Like this video and leave a comment below, because conversations like this matter, and platforms rarely push voices willing to openly question powerful political narratives. The more this debate spreads online, the more obvious it becomes that people are hungry for conversations that feel honest instead of carefully managed. At first, Shapiro frames himself as defending political participation. But then the conversation shifts into something much bigger. Suddenly, the debate is no longer just about AIPAC itself. It becomes about whether criticism of a lobbying organization is now being emotionally fused together with criticism of Jewish identity itself. That is the point where the internet immediately locked onto the interview and started replaying the same exchange over and over again.
That's a problem in our system.
There's a blurring between being against AIPAC and being against Jewish folks giving money, you're saying?
I think it does get blurred because now what you...
That moment became the emotional center of the controversy. Because critics immediately responded with the same question: are people criticizing a lobbying organization, or are they attacking Jewish people? Those are not automatically the same thing. And many viewers felt Shapiro was collapsing those distinctions together in a way that made political criticism itself feel dangerous or socially radioactive. Then critics started bringing up another uncomfortable comparison. Figures like Bernie Sanders have criticized Israeli government policy and AIPAC influence without framing every disagreement as hostility toward Jewish people. That distinction matters to a lot of Americans watching this unfold, because once every criticism becomes morally untouchable, debate itself starts collapsing. And people can feel that tension growing across social media, political podcasts, and younger voter spaces online. And if you're watching this right now and feel like political conversations are becoming harder and harder to have honestly, comment below. Because millions of people across the political spectrum are feeling that frustration build in real time. People increasingly feel like certain subjects come with emotional penalties attached to them, where asking difficult questions immediately shifts attention away from the issue itself and toward accusations about motives or intent. Then the conversation shifts into an even more explosive direction: foreign lobbying influence itself. The commentary surrounding the interview starts bringing up the Foreign Agents Registration Act, historical debates surrounding lobbying transparency, and long-running questions about whether foreign policy advocacy groups should face stricter scrutiny regardless of ideology or country. Whether people agree or disagree with those arguments almost becomes secondary to the larger political reality underneath all of this. Americans increasingly feel like powerful institutions are deciding which conversations are acceptable to have publicly. That perception is spreading fast, especially among younger generations who consume information differently from previous generations. They trust legacy institutions less. They are more skeptical of official narratives. And whether political elites like it or not, conversations about Gaza, lobbying influence, donor power, media framing, and foreign policy are no longer staying at the margins of the internet. They are becoming mainstream political discussions in real time. Then comes the exchange that may have done the most damage politically. Because finally, Shapiro is asked the question viewers were waiting for. Would he accept AIPAC money? Instead of giving a direct answer, he pivots toward the fact that AIPAC does not participate in governor races. And almost immediately, viewers online interpreted the hesitation itself as the real answer.
Do you want their money? And they, to be clear, AIPAC donors.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm running for governor, and they don't play in state races. I'm not trying to be cute about that, but it's just not an issue here in my race for governor.
But this could be a factor down the road if other opportunities do present themselves, right?
Well, I'm not looking down the road. I'm looking at how we can win a re-election for governor.
And you could almost feel audiences reacting in real time as the clip spread online. Because in modern political media, hesitation becomes its own headline. The moment politicians avoid direct answers on emotionally charged issues, viewers instantly start assuming there is something underneath the surface they do not want to say openly. That is why this exchange spread so aggressively across social media platforms and political commentary channels. But here is the deeper reality establishment figures may be underestimating. This is not just about one politician anymore. This is generational. Younger voters question institutions differently. They are less emotionally controlled by old political taboos. And the more politicians try to frame uncomfortable questions as morally suspicious, the more many younger Americans interpret that as proof the political system is protecting itself instead of answering honestly. That is the real reason this interview exploded online. Not because Josh Shapiro made one controversial statement, but because millions of viewers saw something much larger unfolding underneath the interview itself. A collapsing trust between political institutions and a generation that increasingly believes powerful networks shape public narratives through emotional pressure, selective outrage, and carefully managed boundaries around acceptable debate. And now the political establishment is facing a problem it cannot easily control anymore. People are no longer just listening to official narratives. They are dissecting them frame by frame, clip by clip, contradiction by contradiction. And if you made it this far, subscribe to Progressive Wave right now and turn on notifications, because these conversations are only getting bigger from here. Like this video, share it with someone else, and comment below where you think the line exists between legitimate criticism of political lobbying and genuine prejudice, because that debate is shaping the future of American politics right now.